Look at those juices. Oh, this is going to be a great, great dinner tonight. Well, welcome to an early morning session of Smoked Meat with Jeff. Today we're going to be doing a brisket, and this is going to be a long cook, so I went ahead and I broke out my my Grilla grill. This is the silverback model from Grilla Grills. We're going to do pellet smoking today because it is such a long cook, and this is going to be very beneficial for keeping nice, even heat over a long period of time. So let's go ahead and get started. Cooking your first brisket can seem a little bit like an overwhelming task because it is a harder piece of meat to do because it is such a long cook. But don't let that intimidate you, because you really only need a couple of really basic supplies to make this happen. Obviously you need a brisket, and we're going to go ahead and trim this up. For proper trimming of a brisket, I highly recommend doing a search for Franklin's Barbecue on YouTube. He is the master, and he's got some great videos on the proper way to trim up a brisket. But basically you need a brisket. You need your rub or seasoning if you're going to go ahead and season a rub. I highly recommend 50-50 kosher salt and fresh cracked black pepper. Other people like to throw garlic powder in there as well. It's totally up to you, but 50-50 on kosher salt and black pepper is my personal favorite. And you're going to need some butcher paper. You can do it with foil, but butcher paper is much better. It allows the meat to actually breathe during the second stage of this. And like a cooler or your oven or something like that for this hunk of meat to rest in. So let's go ahead and get this thing trimmed up. We'll get it seasoned, and we'll get it on the smoker. Now that we're all trimmed up and seasoned, and I like to put a nice thick coat of seasoning on here because I like a nice thick bark on mine. But that's entirely up to you. We are ready to get this onto the smoker. I've got the silverback heated up to 225 degrees. You want to keep your smoker between, say, 220 and 240 or so over the next 6 to 8 hours. Now, there's two ends of this. There's going to be the point and the flat. And it's pretty obvious which side is the flat. When loading this thing onto your smoker, whether it is a pellet-fed smoker like this, or a stick burner, or you're doing a slow burn with the snake method on, say, a kettle grill, you want to make sure that you have the fatter end towards the firebox or the heat source, and the flat towards the exhaust port, because this is going to kind of do a little aerodynamic heat flow over the top of it. And this part here, which is thinner, will dry out and cook a lot quicker if it's closer to the firebox. So you want this towards the exhaust port of your smoker. So when I put this onto the silverback here, this will be on this side of the smoker, and the flat will be over on the exhaust side of the smoker. So let's go ahead and get this on there. 225 degrees is what I have it set at. It'll be on there for around 6 to 7 hours or so until we hit an internal temperature of around 165, and that's when we're going to move into stage 2. So let's get this on the smoker. Let's talk about fuel. I'm going with some wood pellets that actually came from Grilla Grills. This is their competition blend, which is a mix of various types of woods that lends itself really well to a hearty piece of meat like a brisket. But you can use pretty much any type of wood that you like. Some of my personal favorites are cherry, mesquite, hickory, and pecan. Okay, so we're about 6 hours in, and my internal temperature probe has let me know that the piece of meat has hit an internal temperature of 165. So it's pretty much time to pull this thing off and get it wrapped up in our butcher paper and put it back on the smoker. But let's take a look at this real quick. Oh, that's looking beautiful. Nice color. It's starting to get a little bit of pliable. All right, so now we're just going to get this thing wrapped up in the butcher paper. And then back onto the smoker. Well, here we are a couple of hours later, and our brisket has reached its target temperature of 200 degrees. You want to shoot for a target internal temperature of 195 to 205 degrees, and we're right there smack dab in the middle, so it's time to let this thing rest. Now you can let this thing rest in a cooler with some towels on top of it for a little bit of insulation for like 2 hours or so. But my cooler is otherwise occupied with some booze, so I'm going to go ahead and just turn off the smoker with the brisket inside still wrapped up and just let that sit in here because this is fairly well insulated for the next 2 hours. And then it's going to be time to slice this thing up, serve it, and have some dinner. It's now been a couple of hours where this has been sitting in the grill. Just kind of cooling off, so it's cool to the touch. Let's go ahead and get this bad boy unwrapped and see what we got. Oh, this thing is just full of juice. Okay, so for cutting your brisket, you're going to have up here is going to be the point, and then this is the flat over on this side here. And you're basically going to cut it into two sections, so you can kind of wiggle this around and see where the point starts, which is right about here. We're going to cut it in half this way, and then you want to cut against the grain. So let's go ahead and cut this in half. And then you want to cut against the grain. So we'll start over on this side. And we'll do little 1/4-inch slices on this side here, going against the grain. And as you can see, going against the grain, you get the nice little smoke ring right there. And then of course we have, look at all those juices. Oh, that looks amazing. So while cooking a brisket may seem a little bit intimidating, don't let it intimidate you. Give it a try, and worst case scenario, you screw it up and you're gonna have to do it again. When cutting up your brisket, you wanna go with slices that are about a pencil thickness or so. And sign of a good brisket is you can hang it over your finger and it doesn't just fall apart, but if you were to take it and pull, it's nice and tender. See how that just kind of pulls apart right there? We're doing pretty good. This one isn't quite perfect, but it's good enough for dinner for tonight. So this is Jeff with Smoked Meat with Jeff. I'll see you next time. Break out some brisket. Oh, that's good.